Thanks for tuning in to the Wingspace podcast. This podcast is not a replacement for mental health treatment or professional health care. In case of crisis or emergency, please contact your local healthcare provider or dial 911.
Hey there, and welcome to the Wingspace podcast, episode number 4, Imposter Syndrome. Today I'm going to share with you some of my thoughts about what imposter syndrome is and how you can combat it. So grab a cup of coffee, sit down and take a listen, and know that at the end of this episode, you're going to know exactly how to trust that you can do whatever it is that you're trying to do. I'm going to tell you what imposter syndrome is. I'm going to explain a little bit about my experience, and then I'm going to give you 4 helpful ideas about how you can combat imposter syndrome. So according to the National Institutes of Health, imposter syndrome is a behavioral health phenomenon described as self-doubt of intellect, skills, or accomplishments among high-achieving individuals. Now, I might use a different example or definition of that because really it's not just with people who are high functioning, high success people. So really what we're going to talk about is the everyday Joe, you and me. So according to Psychology Today, imposter syndrome says that it's when people believe they are undeserving of their achievements and the high esteem in which they are, in fact, generally held. It's when people feel that they aren't as competent or intelligent as others might think, and that soon enough people are going to discover the truth about them. So it's not an official diagnosis. It's not something that somebody might come in for therapy for and all of a sudden they have this diagnosis of imposter syndrome. But it certainly is something that impacts us all the time. And I want to tell you a little bit about my experience with imposter syndrome and ways that you can combat it. So I'm going to take you back 5 years. Now, this is episode number 4, so hopefully you've already listened to episode number 1, where I talked to you about and begin the celebration of our 5th anniversary. So I'm going to take you back to the very first day that I saw clients. So we're going back to September 10th of 2018, and I had done all the things. I had gotten the office together, all the business stuff was taken care of, the marketing was good, and I was starting to schedule clients. So September 10th of 2018, I had 2 clients scheduled, one at 6 p.m. and one at 7 p.m. Now, in order for you to kind of understand the evolution of this imposter syndrome over the course of the day, I have to explain to you that the original schedule that I held was that I would go in later on Mondays, kind of a slow start to the day, and then I would work until like 8 or 8:30. So it's kind of like an 11-ish to 8:30 time, because I wanted to be able to catch people for those after work and after school hours. So just like any other Monday, well, a couple Mondays before that, I went in at 11 o'clock, and I remember sitting all day thinking, what am I doing? What am I doing? What have I done? I have started this business and what am I doing? And I just remember questioning over and over, really this whole repeated question of, what am I doing? And am I capable of this? Am I competent enough? Am I a good enough therapist? Do I have enough experience? All of the cycle was just going through my brain over and over and over again. Now, it's been 5 years, so I can't tell exactly what I was thinking and feeling, but I do remember that around 4:30, 5 o'clock, I went ahead and took a little break and I ate my dinner. Although I was nervous, so I probably didn't eat all of it. And then with the first client coming at 6, by 5 or 5:30, I was looking in the chart and I was reviewing the records. And then I remember fluffing the pillows and straightening the pens. I mean, come on. It was like I wanted to make sure that the room looked perfect for this client to walk into the first session with me, knowing full well that they didn't care. Well, actually, at that point, I probably didn't know that they wouldn't care what the office looked like. Now I realize that as long as I don't change things up too much, my clients really don't care. But at that time, I wanted to make sure that the office was perfect for them. So I spent some time fluffing the pillows and straightening the pens. And I saw that first client at 6, and I saw that second client at 7, and I remember they left, and I was sitting in the building by myself late on a Monday evening, and it was quiet and it was dark outside, and I just had this sense of relief, like, I did it. And the next week I had those same 2 clients at that same 6 and 7 o'clock time, and it grew and grew and grew until I had some confidence in knowing that not only I could do this, but I was in fact doing it. So you may have experienced this same thing where you're experiencing self-doubt, you feel like you're a fraud, you're a fake, and that people are going to figure out one day that, oh, she's not who she says that she is. I was watching this little video in preparation for this podcast today, and it was a video that didn't have any sound. It was just like these little bubble people. They kind of looked like minions, but they weren't yellow. And it shows this one minion waking up, and the minion is red. I'm going to call them minions for the sake of understanding. And so this minion was red, wakes up in the morning, red, goes into the bathroom, red, and then paints itself green. And throughout the day, it washes its hands, and there's red, so it paints over green, and ends up going into a work meeting and giving a presentation, and it goes well, and all the people, well, the other minions who are also green, begin to applaud. And then the minion has a few little drops of sweat on its forehead, and it kind of, brushes them away, and then you see the swipe of red under the green. And it shows to the group of minions who are also green, and then one by one they start to just kind of flick at themselves, and then you see purple, and you see orange, and you see yellow, and you just see that everyone else had a mask on as well, and everybody else had covered themselves up. And once they figured out their true selves, they still loved each other and cared for each other and went about their day. And so we have to realize that sometimes, we are who we say we are. We are that, amazing parent, friend, business owner, gymnast, athlete, whatever you want to fill in. And when people see you, they're going to see you for that. They're not going to think, oh, she's just faking it, or she's not worthy of this praise, right? So maybe you think about a situation that you've been in before where you just don't think you're good enough, you're smart enough, you're worthy enough, you're experienced enough, whatever, right? I am not fill in the blank enough. And then how do you combat that, right? How do you do something about that? Because you still have to be that role that you're trying to be, that you don't think that you're worthy of being. So I'm going to give you 4 ideas, and they're not necessarily in any particular order, but I'm going to talk to you about think, write, talk, and do. And again, they're not necessarily in any particular order, but I'm going to kind of weave these ideas of think, write, talk, and do to give you some ideas on how to overcome this idea of imposter syndrome. Now, I will say the first thing I want you to do is I want you to think. I want you to spend some time with your thoughts, and I want you to think about what is going through your mind. And if you're like me, and if you're like many, many other people, there's a lot of negative in that brain. There's a lot of negative thoughts that are circling through your mind. You can't, you shouldn't, you won't, you can't, right? It just circles over and over and over again, and we're questioning ourselves over and over and over again. So once you recognize and identify what those negative thoughts are, I want you to consider the origin story. So who told you that you weren't good enough, smart enough, fast enough? You weren't a good enough teacher. You weren't a good enough business owner. You weren't a good enough fill in the blank. Who told you that? Where did that come from? For some of you, it may have come from a person in your life. At some point, there may have been a person that, you told them your dream and they shrugged it off and said, you can't do that. You're not smart enough. You don't have enough resources. You can't do that. And so we plant that seed in our head and we say, okay, well, we can't. We want to, so we're going to try, but ultimately in the back of our mind, the I can't just really sticks back there. So who told you? And, is it a reliable source? Now, here's the thing. Other people's opinions and thoughts about us, that's their business. That's not our business. And they're not reliable. They're opinions. There's no fact. They're not thoughts and opinions based on facts and truths. It's just someone's perception, someone's belief that turns into our belief. So you identify, where did this thought come from, and you kind of look at, is it reliable? Most likely you're going to realize that it didn't come from a reliable source. It could have come from yourself. And our beliefs, our opinions, those negative thoughts that swirl throughout our mind, they're not reliable. We can't depend on them. We are our own worst enemy, and we tell ourselves things that we would never, ever, ever tell someone else. And we would most likely never tell anyone else what our thoughts are about ourselves. So you're going to identify, acknowledge what these thoughts are. You're going to identify them. You're going to say, where did they come from? And at this point, hopefully you're starting to have a little bit of doubt that these self-doubting thoughts don't hold the weight that you thought that they did. And you can ask yourself, so what? So what if I'm not the strongest person? So what if I'm not the best business owner? What is the worst case scenario? For me, the worst case scenario would have been that my clients didn't come back. And let me tell you, there were clients that didn't come back. And everyone has their own reasons for not coming back. It could have been that I wasn't a good fit. It could have been that they didn't like my approach. It could have been they weren't ready to do the work. They could have been that they didn't know that they weren't ready for the work. They knew that they just didn't want to come back. So what? What's the worst case? They don't come back. And if the worst case happens and those two clients didn't come back, there would be more. And all of the clients are not going to not come back. And what's the best case scenario? The best case scenario is that they come back and they stay engaged and they tell their friends and they tell their friends' friends, and before you know it, there's a full practice. Sometimes the worst case scenario happens. Sometimes the very best case scenario happens. But most of the time, it's somewhere right in the middle, where there's some good things that are coming out of it, there's some not so good things coming out of it, and you can lean on the good to continue on that trajectory. You're going to identify this worst case scenario, and then you're going to begin to replace the negative thoughts with more positive, more constructive thoughts that are going to help to drive you towards that more positive route. It could simply be as simple as, I can do this. It doesn't have to be a big, long thought. It doesn't have to be something that's, super intellectual. I can do this. I'm going to do this. You are smart enough. What is enough anyway? Who sets the bar? Society sets the bar, but I think it changes every day, and it changes for every person, and it changes for the circumstances it changes. So enough, what is that? I don't know. But know that you are smart, strong, determined, knowledgeable, fill in the blank enough. And most likely you have resources available to fill up that enough bucket. So if you need extra support, or you need finances, or you need knowledge and information, you have the resources to do it. You can take a training, you can read a book, you can talk to friends or family or other colleagues or other professionals, you can listen to podcasts, you can fill yourself with information, you can talk to people about where my financial resources might come from. You can, and then fill in the blank. I can what? I can do the things that I need to do in order to accomplish this. And many things that are going to help increase this ability to replace the negative thoughts with positive thoughts is think about who your support system is. Think about the people that have encouraged you. Think about the people that said, heck yeah, you can do that. Think about the people that said, you're going to write a book? I'll read that. I'll read that book. Send me the link. Think about the people that said, oh, I can't wait to listen to your first podcast. How do I subscribe to that? Think about the people that said, oh yeah, show me what your design's going to be for your shirt, and I'm so excited. I'm going to wear it. Do you want me to be a model? How do you want me to share the link, right? Think about those people. Now, we're going to get into this idea of talk, but one of the skills that can be really, really helpful as you're identifying these negative thoughts and kind of doing this investigation of the thoughts and ultimately replacing these negative thoughts with positive thoughts is writing. Now, I tell a lot of my clients to journal, and they look at me like I'm asking them to go buy one of those little Dear Diary journals that's got the little padlock in it. Lisa Frank, right? When we were kids, I'm aging myself now, those crazy colors on the front, for my eyes only, little key. But really what I'm asking you to do is go hit up the back to school sales and buy yourself some, 25-cent spiral notebooks or 50-cent marble composition books. Just buy yourself a cheap notebook of some kind. And the best way to identify what those negative thoughts are is to do what I call a brain dump. And I want you to imagine you're just dumping whatever's in your mind onto that paper. It's a stream of consciousness. You're going to take a pen and you're going to put it on the paper, and whatever comes out of your brain, whatever is in there, is going to come out on the paper. I read a book a couple years ago called The Artist's Way by an author, Julia Cameron, and it's a book from the 1970s, and she talks about artists of any kind, sculptors, painters, writers, composers who get writer's block or artist's block, where all of a sudden they can't produce. And that a really great way to combat this is what she calls the morning pages, where every morning she opens up a notebook and she writes 2 to 3 pages, usually takes 15 to 20 minutes, and just kind of the clarity, right? Similar to if you're working outside in the yard and you're hot and you're sweaty and you're gross and you're dirty, and then you come in and you take that shower and you just feel the sweat, you feel the dirt, you feel the stuff coming off of you. It's kind of what happens with these morning pages with this brain dump, is that you just kind of feel those thoughts coming out of your brain, out of your mind, to make more space. Because we don't want these negative thoughts taking up real estate in our brain, because the negative thoughts, if you can imagine, like, they're bigger, they're clunkier, they're heavier, they take up a lot more space, where these positive thoughts are struggling to find space. So we want to empty the brain of the negative, empty the mind of the negative thoughts, so that there's space for these positive thoughts. So you've dumped the brain, and you have to do this on a regular basis, right? The first time it's going to be awkward, the second time, the third time, it's going to be awkward. But you're going to start to be able to identify, what are these negative thoughts? What am I telling myself about myself that just isn't true? And you can use this journal to also identify, what are my wins? What are the good things that are happening? Now, You don't have to think about these big things like, oh, I got a book published, or I sold my house, or, big, huge accomplishments, because little tiny things are just as important. I journaled today. That's a win. I didn't spend as much time in negative thoughts, self-talk. That's a win. I reached out to a support system person. That's a win. So identifying what those things are, it can also help you kind of go back and say, oh, well, I am making more progress than I thought. Along with wins, you can identify gratitude. What am I grateful for? And it can be little. It can be little. I'm glad it rained this morning, so I don't have to worry about watering the flowers tonight. Because what might happen is I'm going to get home and I'm going to forget to water the flowers, and then I'm going to kick myself, figuratively, for not watering the flowers, right? I'm going to beat myself up about it. So I'm going to be grateful that it rained because the flowers have been watered. That's a simple little gratitude. And maybe I'm also going to identify what are the top three things that I have to do. Because what also happens when we're trying to do something, we're trying to accomplish something, and we feel like we're not good enough, we're not strong enough, we're not enough of whatever, we lose track sometimes of what are we supposed to be doing, the tasks that we're supposed to do. So write them down, make a to-do list. And so that you can identify your wins, and so that you can have things to be grateful for, make them small. Because a baby step forward is still a step forward. It doesn't matter how small it is. Break them down. So if I need to find clients, 5 years ago, right, I was trying to find clients. That's a big to-do. So I'm going to break it down. Who are the people that are going to send me clients? So I did. I had a composition book, and I wrote a list of all the people, all of the organizations, all of the businesses that I had a relationship, personally or professionally. I made a list. So that was a to-do list item. I want to find clients, but the thing I need to do is make a list of who's going to refer those clients to me. The next thing was I needed to write a letter. How do I introduce myself, right? So in order to get clients, I have to find the people that are going to tell potential clients about me, but I need to give them the resource to tell them about me. So before that first day, I made a list, physical list, wrote it down. I wrote a letter, and then I sent a letter. Those are 3 big things that were on that to-do list that ultimately accomplished the goal of finding clients, right? So I'm going to write those things down. And sometimes we have to write it down every day, every single day. What are the top 3 things that I'm going to do in order to accomplish that big goal? I was in a business school training over the last couple of years, and they talked about this idea of like reverse planning, right? So if ultimately my goal is to let's say ultimately this Hope and Healing Therapy and Wellness Center was my ultimate goal. So my ultimate goal was to open a group practice. Well, I'm not going to, let me add in a successful and thriving group practice, right? So I'm not just going to do that today. If I want to do that within 5 years, what do I need to accomplish within 3 years? What do I need to accomplish within 1 year? What do I need to accomplish within 6 months? What do I need to accomplish within 60 days? What do I need to accomplish within 30 days? What do I need to do today? Ultimately, I want to accomplish that big thing. But it's the little thing today that I'm going to do that's going to give me that momentum. When we were talking about the idea of thinking, I mentioned that you're going to talk to your support system. You can identify and you can write down who are the people that have said, oh, you'd be great at that. Oh, that's fabulous. I'll support you. Write them down. And then talk to them. Most people are not going to just blow sunshine at you. they're not going to say, oh, you'd be great at that, if you are not going to be great at that. They might say, have you considered? Have you thought of? What about this, right? They've given some ideas about maybe something a little smaller to start with. But most people are not just going to tell you, yeah, no, you suck and you shouldn't do that. Let me just warn you, though, that there may be people in your life that are going to blow sunshine for the sake of blowing sunshine. I know that my mom is going to be listening to this, and she knows that this is true. In my life, in the past, when I wanted honest, true, realistic advice, I would call my parents' house, and if mom answered, I would say, can I talk to dad? And she would be flabbergasted by that, right? Because I always called to talk to mom, because mom told me what I wanted to hear. But dad would tell me the truth. Dad would tell me the hard stuff, right? So I'd say, let me talk to dad. So when you're thinking about who you need to talk to, are you going to call the person that's just going to tell you what you want to hear? They're going to give you the advice that you want to be given. Or are you going to call the person that's going to be honest with you? Are you going to tap into the people that are going to say, yeah, you're going to do great, but you might want to try this first, right? And maybe you avoid those handful of people that might just be roses and sunshine. And then, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be in the middle. They're going to say, well, I don't really know. And if you've listened to episode 1, you know that that's kind of what my husband said to me when I said, hey, I want to open a practice. He said, well, I don't really know what it means, but let's do it, right? So he wasn't saying, oh, you're going to be great at that, because he really didn't know what it meant to be a group, or at the time a private practice owner. He didn't know what it meant, but he was like, yeah, he knew that I had the skills to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish, regardless of kind of the end result. So talking to those encouragers, talking to that support system is also going to help to drive the replacement of negative thoughts with positive thoughts. So you see how, you're not just going to think and then you're going to write and then you're going to talk. You're going to kind of weave this all in together, because as you're journaling, you're going to write down these people. You're going to talk to these people. You're going to write down what they said about you. You're going to use the things that people say about you, the positive, encouraging things that people say about you, and turn them into self-affirmations. You're going to take when that friend says to you, oh, you're a great planner. You're a great organizer. You're going to turn that into, I can organize this. I can do this. I can plan this. You're going to turn it into an I statement so that you can believe that thing about yourself. So you're going to think about it, right? You're going to explore it in your mind. You're going to write about it. You're going to kind of dig a little deeper. You're going to talk to people about it. You're going to continue to dig a little deeper. And then you're going to do. If you haven't listened to episode 1, I want you to go back and I want you to listen to episode 1, because episode 1 tells you that you're going to start. You're going to do the thing. You're going to keep going and you're not going to stop. Even if it's baby steps, just keep going. I can't say just keep going without thinking about Dory and Finding Nemo. Just keep swimming, just keep swimming. Because the reality is this, guys. If Nemo had stopped swimming up the current, then Nemo wouldn't have found his dad. Nemo also wouldn't have made those friends along the way. Nemo wouldn't have accomplished the thing if Nemo had stopped swimming. So don't stop swimming. You might have to get a little extra support. You might need to have a little nudge. But take the things that people have said and encouraged you with and do the thing, knowing that it's within the reality of your life. So if I had said to my husband, I'm going to open a medical practice and I'm going to be a doctor, he would have probably said to me, so when do you plan to go to med school, right? Because I could be a doctor, but I'd have to go to med school first before I could open a practice. So it's within reality of what we're going to do. I was already a licensed social worker. I already had the education and the training, the tools and the experience and the expertise to be able to open a mental health private practice. So achieving that thing was not outside of the realm of possibility because I had that skill. So if you're listening to this today and you're like, yeah, I want to sing on Broadway, and you've never sung in front of anyone before, then maybe you should start singing in front of someone. Maybe you should join that choir at church. Maybe you should reach out to a voice coach. Maybe you should start singing in the shower or in the car. But you have to start. You have to gather up all the tools that you need. I don't know if any of you have ever watched Rachel Ray used to just have a cooking show. It wasn't her talk show that she has now. It used to be a cooking show. And she would, and I guess it was on the Cooking Channel or the Food Network or something, and she would walk around her staged kitchen, right, and she would gather all these things. So, she had all of her spices, and she had all of her pots and her pans, and she just had everything. And she gathered it up in the kitchen, and then she walked over to the island where she was gonna be cooking and preparing everything, and she just kind of dropped everything down, and then she started. So what are the things that you need to kind of gather? You need to gather your thoughts, you need to gather your positivity, you need to gather your confidence, you need to gather the actual tools, the support system, the people, the finances, you got to gather all the stuff. And that's a part of the baby steps. That's a part of doing it. That's a part of making sure that you have what you need. Because if you have all the tools around you, then you can do the thing you want to do. And you're not an imposter. You're not a fake. You're not a fraud. You are the thing that you want to be. So I encourage you today. What is the thing that you're trying to do? What is the role that you want to accomplish? What is the task that needs to be done? You are very likely the person that can do the job. You're not a fake. So think about it, write about it, talk about it, and then do it. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Feel free to shoot me an email, jennifer@hopehealingtherapy.com. Check out the show notes below to grab our Instagram and our Facebook handles. Feel free to send me an instant message. I'd love to hear about how you're working through your own imposter syndrome and how you can continue to achieve the goals that you're working on. Just remember that you can do it. I have faith in you. I know you can do it. Have a great day.